first. As you know, my name is Fred Lee, legal practice industry for about 22 years in total. How I got into immigration law was I was working with this lawyer that practiced civil litigation. She had one of her corporate clients was inadmissible to enter Canada at that time. So the lawyer had no experience in immigration whatsoever. So as paralegals, we provide assistance to lawyers in terms of legal research, document support, mainly more on the research side, where we research different statutes and regulations. So as a paralegal, I did all the research for this person who was inadmissible to enter into Canada, and discovered that this person needed what's called a temporary resident permit. So I did all the documents, fill out the forms, and I also used my experience as a paralegal to actually add supplemental documents to the application. And then miraculously, it got approved. And then afterwards, I started to crave more for this type of practice. So I decided to enroll myself to study the immigration practitioner program at UBC. And then from there, I studied at UBC, and then afterwards I got my license to practice immigration law. So that's how I started on my career. Basically from my experiences working in different areas of law, and afterwards, from there, practiced a few more years with immigration law firm, and then I became comfortable and confident to open up my own practice. So that's how I got started. I think for me, immigration, a lot of people are interested in getting into it, and it's very rare, and it's very, seldom that we have skilled professionals that have a combination of many years of work experience and also being involved in the education field. So for me, I find that I'm a good fit for this industry going forward, where I come from a background of practicing law in different areas. I work in education, and I also work with the regulator as well. I think it's more about the commitment aspect of it that they have to be aware of. Nowadays, especially with the previous institutions that offered the immigration practitioner program and the one that's being offered at Queen's University and University of Montreal, a lot of students take that program simply because they think that it's an easy revenue source, to earn, a livelihood. But in the reality, it takes years to actually to build up your practice and reputation, and not only just to practice, but your skill set in doing various immigration applications. So my message to prospective students that are looking to embark on a career in immigration law, it's a commitment. It's a long commitment, and also the fact that you need to have a passion for it. If you only see just the financial rewards of his career, then you're in the wrong business. It's about advocating for a person to come to Canada to live. In the beginning, students were, I won't say easy, but I would say a more simple approach to establish yourself as a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Because, back maybe I would have to say about 10 years ago, Canada was welcoming more international students simply because, Canada offers one of the best education programs in the world when it comes to the post-secondary institutions. Right now, I don't focus too much on international students. I focus more on skilled workers. But when it comes to working with international students, it's very rewarding. Of course, when it comes to getting them acceptance into a school that they want to study at, and ultimately, it's not just about the school they're studying at, but the actual educational credential that they receive, whether it's going to be a diploma or a degree, and then afterwards, once they completed that credential, then it leads to working experience in Canada and ultimately permanent residency. It's a general concept, whereas prospective immigration consultants that are new to this industry, that will be the first one of the first clients that they'll encounter. Maybe they have like a network of family members or friends from abroad that want to visit first and then study in Canada. So I would have to say, that it will be very simple for a new immigration consultant to have a prospective client, which would be an international student. It's going to have a huge impact, on our profession, but not just, like a new immigration consultants, but the existing ones that primarily thrive on having international student clients as part of their revenue base. So it's a huge impact. And it's sometimes, when these government changes happen, we have to learn to adapt quick and find other means in the area of immigration law to practice it. So yes, I would have to say it's gonna have a huge impact, and perhaps some immigration consultants out there may face a temporary hardship. I'm gonna have to say this in a twofold perspective. So let's say first, I do agree with the cap in terms of the fact that some private colleges out there or private education institutions throughout Canada, they do take advantage of international students abroad. So there was this, I won't say article, but there's like a YouTube documentary on it's called The Fifth Estate that talks about international students. And some of these like these education institutions, they specifically have recruiters going abroad to different countries and recruiting vast number of students to come to Canada. And some of these colleges that operate throughout Canada, A, they're not accredited, B, they provide false misleading information. C, they have poor educational programs that don't deliver the quality education that they, promise to these students abroad. And the fourth factor, which is the major concern, is the fact that these different educational institutions, they charge an outrageous tuition fees, to students. So the way I look at it, the cap actually helps eliminate the bad actors in terms of these educational institutions who just see these students as profit and not delivering, quality education, only looking at profits more than, the reputation of their school or seeing this, their students, succeed in the program, right? And another factor is the fact that some of these institutions, make promises of, that students will actually get proper jobs afterwards. And in reality, that doesn't happen. It's an unspoken fact right now, but I think, the federal government, along with the provincial government, made certain policy announcements to actually cap, tuition fees. But like I said, it's not very clear on whether or not they're going to cap international tuition fees because, as we all know, international students they pay sometimes double or three times the amount than a local student who's attending these post-secondary institutions. So the cap, in my opinion, like it does protect certain international students from these bad actors. That's me agreeing with cap. Now, the other portion of it is where I disagree. So throughout Canada, I'm gonna probably have to name one particular university in Ontario that relies on international students to actually operate. Most of these educational institutions across Canada, they depend on certain on international students to promote their education programs, hiring quality instructors, investing in proper technology into the education programs. So that part I disagree with because if you have ever known university or college that's known for promoting and providing quality education, the local tuition fees are not enough to cover all their operating expenses. You have to have international students to cover that basis. That's not just for the financial portion as well. I mean, sometimes known universities and colleges throughout Canada want to have international students that maybe are a scholar in their home country. What if they are a PhD student in mechanical engineering in Japan, and basically this university wants to have an exchange program with the student? I mean, that's just an example. Educational institutions in Canada work with international educational students abroad, right? So that's just an example of how the cap, does have an impact on international students coming into Canada. And also, the cap itself has a ripple effect. That's how international students offset, those tuition amounts, for local students. So I hate to say this, but back in my day, I'm an old timer. Education was a privilege. Education, it's not as high as it is right now, back in my day. But right now, education, as we all see it, it's a business. It's a business, for profit. And that's, the alarming part is whereas education institutions, certain ones, they only care about profit. They don't put a lot of attention in promoting proper education programs to new graduates. And I can say from experience as, as a professor, students that receive the education, they're not able to get the anticipated job that they seek afterwards. It's a ripple effect. I guess, have to start out with, COVID. COVID was pretty much ravaged the entire world, and then it leads to another ripple effect, which is the economy. And the economy, is still in the process of, of bouncing back to the way it was, right? Whereas we're now having to see inflation, for everywhere around the world. Costs are going up, as you know, the housing crisis, living costs are going up, as a result of, COVID. And right now, every one of us, we are paying for it. And with these government changes, absolutely, it's a huge detriment, to the economy and also to educational institutions, and let alone local students, international students, even temporary workers. It's a huge ripple effect. And right now, we are facing a crisis. Would have to say that for those who are seeking, not just saying, students, but a lot of my students are actually taking the immigration practitioner program as a second career, right? I guess maybe some of them, I've done a survey about a year ago asking students how many people are doing this as a second career, raise your hand. And I would have to say 90% of them are embarking in immigration law as a second career, mainly because some of them, they work in similar areas that have ties to immigration. For example, one of my students was working in the financial services industry, and they happened to encounter, international clients that have immigration, that actually ask them for type of immigration advice, which they can't provide. So for those seeking a second career, that's the way they see the connection, is the fact that it's connected to the primary job, right? Immigration itself, it's something, whereas it cannot be done on a part-time basis if you're looking to do this as a second career. Not trying to toot my horn. If I want to say for myself to work part-time in immigration and do something else, I have that ability. And the reason why I have that ability is because I've been doing this, for almost, 18 years. I have that ability. But for those who are new to the profession, working in immigration law as a second career, they absolutely can't, because immigration, as you know, has many different areas that they have to be familiar with. And if they provide improper advice, or if they work on an application whereas they are not deemed to be, confident, then it has a detrimental effect on the client itself that they're serving. So, for workers out there, this is a full-time job. It's not just getting into it because you want to earn extra income. It's not about because it benefits your primary occupation. You literally, have a person's livelihood in the palm of your hands, right? When it comes to working on a file, submitting the proper forms, gathering the appropriate documents, drafting the proper letters that go with it. It's all a huge process. And I cannot stress enough that, this profession, especially newcomers that want to come into this profession, it's a huge commitment that they have to consider.